Hello, this is Chris Jansen. This is the End Evil podcast. Today I have with me a guest for this interview, Brandon Smith, who I spoke with like way back when I first started the End Evil podcast. So this is pretty cool to come around full circle and see Brandon again. I'll just real quick say that End Evil is a show dedicated to people who care about truth and freedom. And the goal is to end evil whenever and wherever possible. And the easiest way for us to look at what evil is evil is the destruction of freedom, as Jeremy Locke put it in his book, The End of All Evil. And that was the inspiration for the name of the show. So with that explanation aside, I wanted to welcome Brandon. And hopefully we can talk today about Brandon's new book, Shadow Worked, and what's been going on with him. What's up, Brandon?
What is going on, Chris? I love your headphones first. I just want to say that you have like the coolest headphones I've seen of any podcaster I've talked to recently. And there's been a bunch, so those are awesome. And I'm a DJ, so I get to see cool headphones. But I'm doing well. It was a crazy year, 2020. I think everybody kind of was losing their mind one way or another. But if you're listening to this, you made it through, and I made it through. And I think it was tough for people like us that could see the truth because we knew it was just a bunch of baloney or whatever. But there was like a real conflict around because everybody around us, or in my situation, a lot of people around me were buying into it and wearing masks and all. I mean, they're still wearing masks, but it was just this time where I feel like people like us who have seen truth for a long time, and we always talk to people about it. It was that moment where like, oh my God, here it is, the trap's falling on us, and we always, I don't know if I want to speak for you, but I kind of thought that more people, like, if that moment happened, they would see it, and it was, I mean, there are a bunch waking up, but it was just weird to see everybody put a mask on. And I think that had an effect on me that I wasn't aware of yet. And it kind of was like, cause I'm a very cheerful person. I'm a comedian, and I think it kind of depressed me in this way that I was like, wow, humanity is, and then, I was just like, they're really going to just do this. Wow, this is crazy. I can't believe it. And later I began to believe, and I began to realize, and as I looked into things, I figured out that it's really always been this way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as we know, and of course the history we can never trust, but as far as I've been alive, I could just speak from when I've been alive. It's always been this way. And I think now it's actually getting better because more people are seeing it. Like, how many people do you think believe that we actually went to the moon or whatever? Like, if you think that's a psyop, whatever, I don't want to like start fights or like, not you, but people, but if you can think of that as a psyop to like get countries to, pay attention to each other and citizens in that country, how many people think that was fake? But then, and then 9/11 and now Corona. I mean, I would say there's, as it happened, more people knew. When we could even just talk about 9/11 instead of the moon landing.
Well, what
Yeah.
I've noticed, like, okay, I talk to people a lot. I've been in construction. So like the construction job site's one of those places where at lunch or break, we can talk about things and people don't hold back so much. It's like, on a construction job site, you could disagree with someone and fuck you, well, fuck you too, and we just go on eating. It's just normal, although that's not usually what happens. It's usually not cussing each other out. It's usually people trying to kind of tactfully listen to each other. And there's always some curiosity, but so I mean, I guess I tend to talk to people more who are more likely to like something like 9/11 be like see through some of the BS. And like some of the people I run into day to day, I've noticed, like you're saying, a little bit more easier to talk about something like 9/11. However, the other side of it is, like you were saying, this recognition in 2020. Like I'm a hopeful guy, I'm an idealist. I had this feeling like, oh, something's going to happen, like you were saying, and the world's going to change. And then, it was really depressing because what I saw around me was a town, what I thought was kind of free thinking, kind of a little bit more open-minded kind of people. And it was actually the most crazy lefty communism place I've ever seen all of a sudden. And it was like, really the shock was to me is like, that's how far my perceptions were off. Is
Yeah.
I thought all these people who I still think I still have this battle. I have this conversation with other people like yourself that understand why masks are part of the evil that's happening, where it's like, or quarantine the whole bit. Like, you should be able to realize it's right on your face. Talk about literally on your face. It's right in your face that it's like in opposition to nature and in opposition to what's normal and right when we're inhibiting people's ability to breathe and communicate, you know? And it's like all of a sudden you realize that it's way worse than I thought. I realize it's way, way worse than I thought. So it's like on the same time, I'm filled with hope, new hope, because like you said, there are some people who this is forcing them to kind of, because now it's not so hidden as it used to be. Like things that were occulted aren't as occulted as they used to be. Like it's more in your face. It's either you either get it or you don't. And now you can tell how much someone gets it or don't just by their physical actions in the world, where you didn't used to be able to tell that. So I think what it's bringing people to, like you and I, to is this point of like kind of starting over and rethinking everything. And that's a process we're supposed to go through as human beings. So I think that's, I mean, I want to hear more about your book, Shadow Work, because that's what shadow work is about, right?
Yeah, like, let's get into that. Yeah, exactly. And I think what you said was spot on about our people like us, our reaction. And I'm glad you brought up the word occulted, because this is a word, especially now, it gets thrown around, and it's great now because everybody knows it just means hidden. You know, I even talked to people who previously, let's say Christians, who would previously say that just means evil. They're like, oh, it just means hidden. We know that, you know, and a lot of people will say, oh, it's hidden by these evil controllers who hide it. And I used to think that a little more, but now after 2020, I'm like, maybe it's hidden by people, like they hide it from themselves. It's just in plain sight. Maybe that's what ignorance and ignorance is really all about. It's like, you know, these truths are out there. Like even the mask, when it first started, the governor, I listened to him attentively, calm as a human and, you know, as a man, and he said everyone's got to wear masks, of course, in a store unless you have a medical condition. So I go, oh, there we go, we don't have to wear masks, everybody. And that's not what they heard. I heard unless you have a medical condition. And to me, there is no other better condition than breathing oxygen. I mean, come on, guys. Like, I was in the Marine Corps, and they taught you, if you come across somebody, you know, they teach you how to kill really well. And then they teach you a little first aid, and it's basically start the breathing, stop the bleeding, something, check for shock. But they're like, even if they're bleeding out, you got to start the breathing. And then I'm like, you know. But to get into my book, because I talk about my experience in the Marine Corps, actually, and I talk about occulted stuff, and I kind of explain what it is. And I talk early in the book about my experience in the Marine Corps, and it's basically about boot camp. And I relate a lot to the movie Full Metal Jacket, because that movie Full Metal Jacket by Stanley Kubrick is so spot on to the mind control that you go through. And again, I signed up for it, you know, so it's not like I'm like, look what they did to me. It's like, no, I signed up for it. I knew what was going on. I saw Full Metal Jacket before I went. So, you know, even though it was like 1994, I knew what I was getting into. But anyway, so I relate that the book a lot to that, because I know people have seen that and it's something they can go look at. And I talk about how these drill instructors use techniques. And one of the techniques that they use, a famous scene, is Private Pile. When, if you haven't seen the movie, basically there's this one guy who keeps screwing up, and he's overweight and all this stuff. And one time the drill instructor is going through his stuff, and he finds a donut in his like little box that you get to keep stuff in. It's like a Foot Locker, they call it. And he's like, a goddamn jelly donut, right? And he's freaking out. But everybody else has to do push-ups, and he gets to eat it and enjoy it, you know? And so that's a real psychological mind screw up, because I've witnessed that. Not something to that level, like, because what happens is, spoiler alert, they end up beating the guy up really bad. So because he just keeps screwing up, and that's what they do. But the reason that they do it, you know, I tell you, like, there's a reason for it, because if you are going to be in combat, I'm not suggesting it, but if you are going to be in combat, you need that discipline. Like, it's better to go through it there to weed people out. But what I do, though, is I explain how tactics like that work. And again, I explain how they're necessary. And then I also go into later in the book how I've overcome addiction in my life. I had very severe intimacy issues, and it expressed in what people would call like sex addiction. But I don't really like to say that, because it just conjures all these thoughts in people's mind when you say that. But I was able to overcome that. And it was really just by healing myself. I had to look at the demons and do the shadow work. You know, that's why I named the book Shadow Worked. That's the name of the book. And you can go to shadowworked.com if you want to get a copy of it, or just read the first 2 chapters for free. But it's because of the shadow work that I went through, and I've always heard people talk about the dark night of the soul, and you go through this metamorphosis, and I went through it in my life probably for a couple of years, really, as I molded this new, and I explain it as like an aperture or just a point of view or way to view the world. Like I had this shift in the way I saw the world, and I woke up and everything was kind of different. I'm like, oh my God, how do I even interact? Like, how do I, what do I do now? So I kind of had to rebuild all that. And through that process, it was a process of me choosing what worked, like the Trivium Method. If people are fans of Mark Passio and Richard Grove and stuff, they talk about the Trivium Method all the time, and I love it. You take the available information, the facts, and what doesn't work, you just get rid of it. And it's the same thing with the dark night of the soul, and you form this new person, and it's like the butterfly or like the lotus coming out of the water, and everything else kind of just falls away. So I went through that experience, and then 2020 happened, and I couldn't explain. I was like, wow, because I was freaking out, but there was something else going on. I had this like spidey sense, and I'm like, I see what it is. It's like everybody up, the whole world is being forced through a dark night of the soul. They're being told stay home, which was, I did that voluntarily before. I just stayed home because I didn't want to deal with people. I was a DJ in my other life, and I also did comedy. So I would go out to do comedy and DJ weddings and stuff. But other than that, I'd hang out with friends like once in a while, but it was mostly reading, studying, doing this, all these, exercises, exercising, all just self-healing stuff. So anyway, I saw that was happening, but I also saw these people weren't making changes. Like they were going home, like I was, like staying home or whatever, isolating from people, but they weren't making changes based on what they thought was right. It was like when I was in boot camp and these people were screaming in my face that I had to do it. It was that. So I was like, wow. And it was just I saw it was just a total inverse. It was so close, but it was just looking at it backwards. And it blew my mind. I'm like, I have to write a book about this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. So I started over the summer to just write and write and write. And this is where I kind of want to talk about a little bit, because I used Hermetic principles, and I'm not that I'm even like a professional. I just kind of use these principles of because I'm into tarot and stuff. So I used like building a foundation, like the four. A four is a really good foundation card, like the Four of Pentacles. So I thought I started with 4 chapters, and I was going to just make it a short book. And then from there it grew, and the chapters got larger. And then I had, so it was a way to do it. And, because I feel previously in my life, I've always wanted to do different ventures, like do this or that. And I kind of, some worked, some failed, but this way is really a way to do it and always go back, because whenever I got lost and I didn't know where I was, I'd go back. What I did was I just took a piece of paper and I actually drew with a pencil, like art and little symbols and what chapter 1 was going to be about and how I was going to do the story. So I just keep looking at that to keep it in my mind. And it was a way for me to stay focused. But that's basically the theme of the book. And then I talk, at the end, I give a positive message for the future, because I think so many people are talking about doom and gloom, and I just don't see that. I see it, I understand it, but when I vibrate to a higher level and I look at a bigger picture, I see it's like a destruction, like the Tower card in tarot. Everything's crumbling right now, but it doesn't stay crumbled. What happens after it crumbles? It grows. It's the phoenix. It rises from the ashes. And I feel like once that happens, it's going to be different and better than people think. So
I really like you brought up the Phoenix. That's something that was on my mind when we first started talking today. And with the idea of shadow work, like, okay, here's something I've gone through in the past year. I think when you're on a path towards like self-realization, when you're actively working in your life to improve who you are, which really comes down to asking that question is like, who am I, or why am I here? Like if somebody has asked those questions to themselves seriously and seeking the answers, then the universe starts shifting. You start noticing changes. Your life will not stay the same if you follow that path. It will force you to come up against challenges that you either, go back in your shell and hide from them, and it just the same problems are going to keep happening in your life, or you like face them head on, and life brings you new challenges, right? So like going through that process is what I guess my realization recently has been. That's why we're here, is to go through that process, is to self-realize, to die and be reborn over and over. And like all these religions, even the like Masons have their thing where in order to become a certain level, they have to basically bury you, and then you're reborn. The Christians have this thing about being reborn. Every spiritual practice has some sort of reborn practice, because like you don't need a bunch of words and books to describe this process. It's a natural process. It's part of being alive. And those of us in the world that aren't doing that, they're not actually living, they're dying. If you're living, if you're self-actualizing and figuring out why you're here, it forces you to become, go from a caterpillar to the moth or the butterfly to be reborn. It's part of the process. And if you're going through that, that means you're on the path of realization, right? Self-realization.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel I love what you said. All those things are so spot on. And if you take what you said a little further, that we're here to do this work, there's a way I feel that I've started to change my point of view where, and this is the thing, it's not like you get this point of view and then all of a sudden it's magic. It's something you have to work on, and there's different levels. There's this guy who described it, this author, and his name's James True, and he talks about different levels of like a black belt, like a white belt, somebody who thinks 9/11 was real, like it was 19 box cutters. And then yellow belt is fear. It's like, oh my God, it was the government. They're coming to get us. And then red belt is anger. We're going to go get them. And then purple belt is, maybe they're doing these things. Maybe nobody really died. It was not what they said. Maybe there's just show going on in the background, right? Like this is these crazy ideas that people talk about. And these are the things too, these rabbit holes. I'm not suggesting by any means, if you're listening to this, to go down these rabbit holes. The only rabbit holes I suggest going down are the ones of self-discovery first. Just keep going down those, and then you'll know when it's time to not. Because the way this universe works, I feel obviously we've been lied to a lot. And, I've gone down some crazy rabbit holes, and it's like you could basically validate any viewpoint that you have with quote unquote evidence. Well, it could all be real. Like that's what I'm saying. We could be in some kind of crazy dimension where it is all real, depending where you put your focus. So that's why I'm telling you, just focus on yourself, because I found once I get to know myself better, some of these things don't matter as much. People are like, is the earth flat or round? I'm like, I don't care as long as we're all having a good time. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. But it's stuff like that. Like let's figure out our behavior first, then maybe we can unlock that challenge next, but but anyway, getting back to what you were saying, I think it's great, because if you can get to this viewpoint where, because like in the Tao, just quote the Tao to start what I'm going to say, because a lot of people, when you say this, they'll lose their mind. And I used to be one of these people, and I get it, because sometimes I still will lose my mind. But there's this quote in the Tao, one of the verses says, do you want to change the world? I don't think it can be done. The world is perfect. If you tamper with it, you'll ruin it. And the way I bring it up to Christians, for example, I'll say, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe God is perfect? Yes. Do you believe God created everything? Yes. Okay. Well, then isn't everything perfect? Hello? So if it's still a little hard for you to kind of grasp what I mean, it's just like everything I feel that's happening on a level needs to happen. Now, that doesn't mean I just sit back and watch it happen and say, haha, watch the world burn. No, now that I know that, I have to follow my intuition and get on my path and work on myself as much as I can. And then other people around me, and I've noticed this, they pick up on it, because I could tell somebody 1,000 times, don't do this, stop eating wheat or whatever, you're eating bread, it's terrible for you. But if I do it and they see me and I'm like, hey guys, I'll be 45 in a month, look at me, maybe you should, it's a little better. So in that same thing, spirituality, whatever, I'm just living this path now. And I feel like by doing that, that's really what is changing the world. So I still am changing the world, but I'm not trying to get a group together to go LARP and take over the Capitol or whatever, like we're just like one at a time. And then when I get it, when someone else gets it, all that other stuff disappears. It's like, why would we even want to control the other people? And I feel like that's kind of the way it changes. And we were talking about cycles earlier. in nature we just see cycles, and in nature there are no lies. And they've talked about this. You could look at the prophecy of Hermes, you could look at the Hopi Indian prophecy, all these things. If you're not familiar with, go look up and listen to them. They're beautiful. Think about the Indian, like from India, the Vedic idea of the yugas, the cycles. And we're just in these cycles, so they're gonna come back around. Right now they're saying it's the dark age, so it's the dark age. So, well, guess what, guys? We're the heroes. If you're listening to this and you're on the truth, that means you're the hero of the story. We're the ones that keep the story going for the future, because right now it's too late. We can't run out and stop President Joe Biden from telling people to wear masks, but we can educate the kids in the future and just point out how ridiculous this is. You know, that's what I like to do also with my comedy, because if you can point that out to the children, they're the ones who are taking this over. That's where the real war is. It's in the youth, in the future, in the minds, you know. So we're creating these podcasts. Hopefully it'll inspire other people to do it. And that's really where I see it. And that's again where I can go back and say it's perfect.
Anyway, it could take a long time. You know, I thought, like you're saying too, like, okay, if this is all source material, I like to use that word source recently. God, sometimes, you know, we could get into the religion subject afterward. But sometimes when you say God, some people think you're talking about like some guy in the heavens or a particular personality or a particular deity. And so that's why I like, when I use the term God, I'm talking about like everything, the source, like the code that everything is built on.
I'll just say this really quickly. I say to people when they ask me, I'll just say my belief is that this is not random. There was a creation, a creator, something created us. And then after that, you know, we're cool. Like we could talk about theology and stuff if you want, and not you, but I'm saying I'd say this to people. But that's all that matters to me, is like for people to see that how could you believe that randomness or that this order can come out of chaos? Like, is that really something that can happen? Like, can you get this beautiful thing to be constructed out of nothing? Like, it's, you know, that's, and then once you start, because I feel the atheism is really where you can let the despair eat on you. And I've seen it happen. I know people that aren't alive anymore. They were in 2019 and they're not now, and they didn't die of corona, you know, because the despair eats on you. And again, I'm not in despair myself, because we're all on this journey. And, you know, but yeah, I like what you said about that, because so many people get screwed up with that word God, where it's like, I just mean, you know, it's something, it's a creator, you know, there's something, you know, the all, if you want to call it that, if you're Hermetic or whatever.
Like, that's, I think, why we both have a tree behind us. It's the idea that all things are connected, that I like to term interconnectedness, you know. Exactly. Everything you do matters. So just like you throw a little rock into a pond, the ripples go all the way out. So this pond matter. Everything we do matters. So then I'm trying to get to the next point. Like, your thoughts do matter. Yeah. And your beliefs, if you have a belief system, that matters too, because you're putting that out into the world. And that's what's creating the future, is all these people processing this information, then transmitting it out. And then that's what's creating, you know, people get so mixed up with this manifestation thing, you know. Yes. But like you're saying right now, there's only so much you can do. We're experiencing like the culmination of everything that happened up to now. So that's the world of effects, you know, that we're seeing. Oh shit, look what's happening around us. That's what built up to now. So if you want to do something about it, that's like inputting for the future, right? That's starting with thinking, okay, and then processing that information. Then it comes out, right? By the time it comes out, the thinking's already been done. So like, we might have to go through 400 years of really bad trials for humans, maybe 1,000, maybe 4,000.
Yeah, you know what though? That's true, but things though, I really feel like, and this is the thing, I don't want to be cocky, but I, you know, like I said, I'll be 45, and like going through school, I've always was like, I had trouble and all this stuff, and I always had this feeling that I was right about things. And now looking back, I was right about a lot of goddamn things, right? So, excuse my language, everybody, but what I have this feeling of is like, this is the part of the movie, this is like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, where like everything's going bad and it's like the end, but like we're about to lose, but then all of a sudden, you know, someone shows up or whatever it is, and just boom, it's over, and then it flips. And there's this theory that I've been hearing lately, that, and it was coming through like the Vedics, where with the ages, like the Kali Yuga, which is the Iron Age, we're supposed to be in the Dark Age, and they're saying people thought it went like golden, then like, you know, it would go like silver, and then bronze, then iron, and then back to bronze, silver. So it has to work its way up. And people are like, no, 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 it goes right immediately to the golden age. They're like, no, it goes right there. And people are like, that's what they think all this craziness is about, because whoever might be in control, like people in control of governments and stuff, if they do read the stars or they know these things and they, they plot, they might know an awakening's coming. So they're giving it everything they got. So that tells me it's the, it's the final push. Just keep going. But if it's not, what you're saying is exactly right. I just want to give hope to people, or I don't know, hope, but it's
it wouldn't,
like,
really what it helps me do is I got a certain calmness from this thought. Like, okay, I look back at someone like, I like Thomas Paine. I like to talk about Thomas Paine because I feel like the words that Thomas Paine wrote in the time he lived were not accepted by his community on the whole. People really didn't like him. Even then, when he came back to the States, like people really didn't like him because he said things about their religion that they didn't like, But his words like had a major impact on the way the things changed in the world over the next 100 years, 200 years, and they're still affecting people like me. Like when we discover Thomas Paine, it's like, oh, right, this is huge, right? Like, so what you and I are working on right now could be in a similar vein if we do a good job at what we're doing. And that might allow people a couple hundred years from now or a couple thousand years from now to use these words as leverage and actually get out of the situation. It could take a while. We don't know that. We really don't. And like, I think one thing you really hit on earlier that is a big deal to me is to not get stuck, like you said, in the conspiracy rabbit hole world where people want to talk about what's going on in the news right now, or what's the latest movements of the troops or whatever. And to me, like those discussions are worthless. They get us nowhere. Like until we deal with how to handle morality, objective morality, there's no changing things. And what I'm seeing around me, even with people that a lot of people I think of as being pretty open-minded and like close, like they're getting it. A lot of them still aren't getting it because they're not recognizing that everything you do matters and that everything's connected and that there's objective morality, that it's either right or wrong, like that there is such thing as right and wrong. Like they still want to hang on to this kind of normal Satanist kind of view that our society has, that you could believe whatever you want and beliefs are fine. You can have whatever belief you want. But it's like believing is very dangerous. And it's like close to evil. I almost want to put belief in the category of evil because people are using that word to describe a way to be instead of a way to learn the truth, and that's like a cliff to me.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, man. Have you heard of Crow 777?
Yeah, I love that show. I've listened to it quite a bit.
Oh yeah, and he has this saying that belief is the enemy of knowing, and I agree with that. But there's this little caveat I want to give to, because just like anything else, I feel everything basically is a tool. So belief actually is a tool that you can use. You can use the tool of belief. Could it be that you can use the tool of belief to heal yourself? Because if you believe something works, it works. But then again, if you believe something works and it's false, it could be leading you to, like you said, adhere to this false ideology where you're lying to yourself. So you have to be very careful. But that's the thing about belief. I just didn't want to demonize it totally. But yes, I get exactly what you're saying. It's when you let beliefs get in the way of reality is when it's a problem. There's like a time and place for everything, so
like you don't want to have rose-colored glasses, like that's what I realized. One of my big realizations is because I've always been sort of an idealist and I'd like to think of myself as an optimist. When I came to realize all these heavy things like studying 9/11 or weather engineering over, who's controlling the world, that it's as heavy, it's like, wow, this sucks. It's really hard to deal with. And then part of me just wants to hope for something like you're saying, like the movies, something big's going to happen. It's all going to come down and then we're going to get it resolved, but it's not always that easy.
No, for sure. I don't want you to think, and to cut you off, I don't want you to think that action is not required. And I don't want you to think that it's just going to be like, when I'm saying a golden age, I don't think it's going to be like magical or whatever. But what I see happening is Okay, so I see, like, if I was going to give a reading, right, like as a tarot card reader or whatever, and I'm divinating, and the breeze that I smell on the wind, like, or what I smell on the wind, is that there's going to be like a script flipped, and like everybody who was previously believing, we'll say, the mind control of 2020, they're going to look like idiots and might even be like isolated. So I think that it's just because it's when they say like a revelation or like an apocalypse, all they really mean is just like it's an information and knowledge is going to be all of a sudden shown to people. Like we were talking about the occult. I feel like that veil of ISIS is coming down, baby, and people are going to see it. So when they do, if say you were controlling people, right, and you knew this, they were going to see some truth. It would be good to fool them, right? We'll do the little thought experiment, fool them, and some are going to be fooled and some aren't, and then flip it around so the ones who were fooled all of a sudden look good. So now everybody's under your mind spell, kind of in this crazy way. Could it be? So that's again why I say don't pay attention to any of these media things, because I think the world itself, yeah, that's probably going down. There's nothing really can do about that. But as far as building the future, you can get with like-minded people. You can find 10 people within 10 minutes of you that you can rely on and build friendships and get some chickens and start a garden and let Babylon burn if it has to. And you can do what you have to. And I feel like as long as you're standing in your truth, there's really nothing that's going to happen to you, because honestly, all these things, I feel it's all they're it's like offers. They're all offers. I've been studying law a lot and like maritime law and stuff. All these things are offers. They're telling you, like I said earlier with the governor, unless you have a medical condition, these little caveats they put. It's like a shit test, I'd say. I don't know if we swear on your thing, but
No,
I
go
I
for it. Yeah.
okay, I don't swear often, but I like to say shit test because it's very like it's the thing we talked about in the Marines and stuff. Like it's like, hey, are you going to keep putting up with this crap, or are you going to stand up for yourself? And again, going back to that point of view I was talking about, what if there were people who were quote unquote controllers and they're like, hey, how do we wake these people up to make them look at them? They just keep stuffing their food with their faces with food. They keep getting new cars every 2 years and they're in debt. Like, how do we wake them up? What if you look at Bill Gates as somebody saying that, like, and you know what, all these other people, they can burn. Now, I'm not saying that's the way that you should be, because obviously that's not like the golden rule, natural law. But if you can kind of empathize with these people who are doing it and not hate them, and again, empathy and compassion doesn't mean consent. It doesn't mean you agree with it. You could just say, oh, these guys are probably Satanists. They were probably heavily, I'll just say they're diddled, like I'm sure really bad things happen. So it's just a thing they're controlling. Look at them as a child that wants power. And then you can release that hate, man. And it's like, oh, again, because I'm not saying like the anger is bad, because anger is great. It's a temperature thing. It's like something's going on here. Why am I getting angry? Especially if you do work and fix yourself and you start to get angry, you're like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I'm validated with this anger. But then you don't have to use it to lash out. Like I said, you can use it with those odds of compassion, and then it loses its grip on you, and you could just focus on your own life. Because really, I feel your attention is what this system feeds on. You're like a battery. If you want to bring it back to the Matrix, like, yeah, you are a battery. And when they go back and forth, and Democrat, Republican, like, get the vaccine, don't get it, it's dangerous, it's not, it's like and they have your control. And what aren't you paying attention to? Your children. You're not paying attention to what you're putting into your body, literally what you're creating in this world, which creates the world for everybody. So if a shift occurs in that area and people start to wake up, I think it could get better. Again, I don't think it's going to be like angels coming down and saving us. The work is required, like you got to. But if you're hearing my voice and it's resonating with you, don't be scared or worried, man. Don't, because it's going to get good for people like us. If you're not in fear, you're going to crush out there, right, in this new world. I'm telling you, man, because people are going to be cowering and they're not going to want to go out and do things. But if you are,
I was reading this book, and I'm not one of those people who has a brain where I can pop it up right now, but it was about hermetic principles.
lucky
And
you. Sorry.
and yeah,
Trust
right,
me. No,
yeah, like my brain's very free range.
yeah,
It was describing like polarity, how
exactly.
kind of what you were saying, like sometimes when you go from one extreme to the other extreme, it actually showed like a picture like a horseshoe, like a magnet horseshoe, where the two ends, the two polar opposites, are actually really close together. So it's almost like, the alcoholic who has to hit bottom before they turn around and start going the other way. I do think it is that point. And like what I've experienced is, as I put more, this whole experience has forced me to put more bravery into the world and take more initiative. Where a lot of years I was just sort of kind of quiet, a little bit on the fence. You know, maybe I was working on some stuff in my own quiet way, but this forced me to like start running down the track, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, looking for tools and looking for other people, like swimming like it's an emergency, you know, and all of a sudden I'm meeting people, I'm involved in groups, you know, I'm having these crazy serendipitous life experiences where things that
Synchronicity,
are
like a mofo.
synchronicity that are
Yeah, bro.
impossible. There's no way this stuff is just by
I got a
chance.
crazy synchronicity story when you're remind me because I got to tell you. But anyway, keep
No, go
going.
for it. Right ahead.
All right, it goes into what I was going to actually talk about, which is masks. You know, I didn't agree with masks, and I haven't worn one yet. And I live in Connecticut in the suburbs, where when I go to a store, everybody has a mask. And usually every time I go, somebody will say something. If I'm in a grocery store, like someone will come up to me, but they're cool about it because they get it, and I know what to say, and I'm really cool about it. Like I said, I'm cool, chilled out. Like these days, I'm just, if someone comes up to me, is like, "Hey, sir, you need a mask," and I'm like, "You're right." And then I wait a second. I'm like, "Oh, but just so you know, I have a exemption. It's totally legal. You don't have to worry about it. It's, you know, I've been here before. No big deal." And that gets rid of 80 to 90% of people who don't even want to be confronting you about a mask. They just feel it's their job or whatever, and you give them an out. It's like poker, you know, like in poker when you raise pre-flop and someone comes over the top and you're like, no, 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 I'm all in. They're like, okay, I fold, I get it. Like, you know, you give them an out. Um, it's like you made a move. So what happened was I have to go to court for like a traffic thing, and I'm like, man, how am I going to get around this one? But I know that they're really not making people do it in court because if you have an exemption. So I called down there. I reached out to a friend that I know that works there, and this person is, you know, like still in the thing and just like, oh, you got to wear a mask. There's no way. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I reached out to the court myself. I called them and I'm like, listen, I called the guy and I go, I don't want to cause trouble. I'm like, I'm not here to like get a soapbox or change on his mind. I'm like, I just can't, you know, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I can't wear a mask. I need to breathe. What can I do? And then he's like, you got to call the marshal. I'm like, okay. So I called the marshal, left a message, said basically the same thing. I'm like, man, you know, I'm not trying to break your walls. You sound like a nice guy in your voice message. I was a Marine. I get it. He calls me back and he's like, is this Brandon? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I heard your message and I want you to know this is all crap. This is all BS. I hear you totally. I was like, whoa, what?
Breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, it ends up that I don't want to get too specific into details, but I know him through the DJ world because of security and stuff, you know. So he's like, "Oh, I know you." He's like, "Yeah, dude, don't worry." And then he found out for me. I thought my thing was the next day. They changed it and didn't even tell me. And he's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry. Come the day before, call me. I'll take care of it all." And I'm like, I was worried for about a month. I was kind of worried what I was going to do and all this stuff about it. And I let that worry bother me and distract me when this whole time that dude was just like, God works in mysterious ways, or however you want to see it. Again, don't worry about a thing because every little thing is gonna be all
All
right. You
right.
know, it's like, dude, if you're in truth in this whole time, it's not like I've been working on my book. I've been doing tarot readings for people. I've been doing stuff, and a lot of the stuff I do with people, it's like, I don't want to say I'm like helping people, but I at the end of the day I am, but it's because I'm helping myself and they're a witness to it. So I'm like calling people and giving them advice or anything, but as long as I'm staying on that path, things are just working out for me, you know, like if you know, it's crazy. So yeah, that's what I gotta say. Basically, it's to not be in fear and not be in despair and just do what you have to do. And I always want to say to you, you are Thomas Paine. You're the 2021 Thomas Paine, Chris. Like that's because I was on a conversation with some people the other day. We were on a Zoom call or whatever. It wasn't being recorded, but I said to all these people, because we were talking about hermetics and all this stuff, and I go, you guys realize like when Thoth and Hermes or wherever they were talking about the dark times and they prophesized, and you know they were talking about us like we were the ones that were going to be keeping it alive, like that's us. And they were like, wow. I'm like, yeah, dude, like just know that, not to make it cocky or anything, but it's just to get you out of despair. It's like, because we all feel like, I don't know about, I don't want to speak for everybody, I feel like when I first came onto this, I'm like, I'm going to save the world, you know, like I came across people like Mark Passio and you know absorb his work, and I'm like, I can teach this to everybody because it made so much sense to me, you know, like how we should live. But then once I encountered so much resistance, I realized it's like, no, it's not my job to exactly change the world, just to change myself, and then the ones around me, and basically work it out that way. It was just such a relief to get off my
Yeah, and a lot of that's really like how you value your time. I've found
yeah.
the way I look at time is so much different now. I'm like, okay, I got 2 hours in front of me right here. What would be the most valuable thing to do with it? And when I have that time and I'm able to spend that time working on like one of my presentation things, I don't care how many people really watch it anymore. I used to really get hung up on that. Now it's the act of doing it. It's all practice. Everything in life is practice and conditioning.
Yeah.
And there's certain moments in the future where that are going to be a little bit more pivotal, when something you say or do is going to hit a little more, and you're going to see it in more numbers or quantity. But you would have never got to that moment had you not been doing the conditioning, the push-ups every day until that moment, until you were able to say that right thing at that right moment. So a lot of times you don't see, the labor, you don't see the fruit of your efforts,
Mm.
until later. Then you might get some glimpses of it. You might not. You think through history, there's a lot of people that fought against heavy resistance, that went through torture, that went through all kinds of terrible things in life, but never backed off. And we look back at those people like they're heroes. And even if those people got tortured or had to go through physical pain or whatever, they still died a lot happier than most people, because they were living their purpose, and they knew deep down that they were doing what they wanted to do and they cared about doing. And what I think that's what's a lot hard for people to soak up, because our culture so much teaches what comfort and happiness are, and it's such a false illusion, where really the only thing that's ever going to make someone happy in any way is working on their purpose, doing something of value, making yourself feel like your time is valuable, like you're here for a reason. That's the core important principle. Each person is working towards that, we would have a wonderful, beautiful world.
Yeah, dude, purpose is so important. I just want to give this witness because one thing I've been telling people when they say to me, like, did you hear about this? Did you do this? Did you what about this guy? I'm like, first of all, do you know somebody it happened to? You know, can you verify the story? Because guys, the media is so out of control. I don't know if you know this, but like CNN, I probably talked about this last time, interviewed a lady who was George Floyd's third grade teacher. She says, Dr. Waynell Sexton was her name. And she was a white lady who was a third grade teacher who still had his homework 40 years later or something. So I'm telling you, if it's on the media, take it with a grain of salt, if it's in the media. But oh yeah, I was gonna say like I've used what I've learned. We'll say like from Mark Passio exactly. For example, specifically, I mean, I used it and I embodied it, but I did the work on myself, and I think that's the most important thing, because a lot of people will go out and they see a problem in the world. And in my humble opinion, I'll just ask a question here. Do you think there's really a problem you might see in yourself, and it's a reflection? Because if you could view the world as perfect, then you're not trying to change it. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that you're like, what do you mean, Brandon? Well, it's like, who the
It's your
fuck are you?
teacher.
Like, who are you to think you could change the world, you humble little person? Like, start with yourself first, is what I mean. And then by that, and the synchronicities happen, and all these things, like you said, man, they just line up.
It's like reality is your teacher. That's what the essence
Yeah,
of what natural law is, that you put something in this computer program, it's going to pop something back out at you. You don't
yeah,
get to experience it through somebody else's eyeballs. You could try read their book or listen to their poem, and sort of, but you're still experiencing it through your own eyeballs and your own experience. That's what you have. That's this valuable tool you have.
yeah.
And it's just an interpretive tool. It's, I don't know,
If you
maybe I'm
haven't
getting.
done that work, man, and if you haven't done that work, and that's why even Mark, like I went back and revisited the natural law seminar after having seen it for a couple of years, and I was like, wow, he's really like, you really have to do the work. And at the time, I went through the work and did it, and I kind of just assumed that everyone else had done it too. But now, as I see other people, like again, no judgments or whatever, but just you see some people's reactions on social media and stuff like this. I'm like, oh, I get it, because there's a lot of fear driving people. And at the end of the day, if fear is what's driving you, what are you creating again? So it's like coming back to that and using these principles to actually work on yourself. Because if you're looking at these problems in the world, it's probably because there might be something inside. I said something to somebody recently. I just had a reading actually on my terrible podcast, and the person, she was a business spiritual coach. It was pretty cool. And she was like, whatever business you do, Brandon, she's like, you don't, what your personality type, whatever it is, the reading, she's like, you don't want to be the hero, you want to be the guide. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I was just having a conversation with my friend and we're talking about the Matrix, and he's kind of just waking up and he's like looking at me for all these answers and stuff. And I go, listen, dude, I'm not Neo. You're Neo. I'm the Oracle. You know, like I said this to him like a month ago or whatever. I'm like, you need to wake up and do the work, not me. I did the work. I conquered the demons. My demons work for me now. You know what I mean? Like, now
You
you
need
got to
to
do it.
be your own hero. You know, that's
That's
something I've
right.
been working on some curriculum for that, because I think that's something I
That's
could
great.
teach people. Like, imagine yourself being a superhero. You know, this is like your own self, but better in every way, and work towards being that guy, you know,
This is so synchronistic, because if you're
or
putting
gal.
stuff together, yeah, exactly. My friend Ashley, who I do the podcast with us on you about, this is all the stuff like she wants to get into. She used to be in she worked in a museum and stuff, and she tailored their whole summer camp program every year and stuff. So it's the knowledge that she has and the people that keep coming, cycling back into my life, the quality of humans right now, it's great. Like you, obviously, great quality, and you want to do this work. So I feel like this is what I'm talking about. Like, that's why I don't have despair, because it's there. All we have to do is do it and not go watch TV. Instead, do this podcast. You know what I mean? Oh, that's what I wanted to say. So you're doing all this thing like me, right? I have this channel, all these videos. I've been doing a blog for years, and I don't have tons of views. Like, actually, I got kind of lucky last year. I was able to like interview Dr. Buttar, like Judy Mikovits, and all these people through like a stroke of synchronicity, I guess. And I got like hundreds of thousands of views on my videos, but on someone
Nice.
else's channel. But they saw my website is cool. But you know, I'm struggling along. I got views. You know, some videos have like a couple hundred, some have like 20. But I think though, I was just thinking this when you said that, because I related. And it's like, but this is the thing. It's not what were we doing with our time, but what were we not doing with our time? You know what I mean? We spent all this time creating awesome stuff. And now it's going to give us credibility, because I have videos going back to like 2014 when I was a comedian, like saying funny jokes and stuff. So people could go back and look at like the whole progression of it if they really want, and it could be highlighted. But it's great because people are going to know you're a real person. Because I think in the future, now it's already hard to tell if you're just interacting with somebody online, like on Twitter, say, for example, or whatever. Not that I really go on there, but it's kind of hard to see if they're like a real person or like a bot or somebody that's like in a click farm somewhere. You know what I mean? But just think of going forward, if this technology gets better, it's going to even be hard to see if you're dealing with like a real person. You know what I mean? So it's like, it'll be good to see this history. But yeah, but going
Not
back to what I
only
was
that,
saying, oh yeah, go
but
ahead. I was just going to
I
say,
was
like,
just saying you
it's
get
what we're
better at
not
it too.
doing. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's such good practice. You just get so much better at it.
Oh yeah, what we're not doing, that's a great subject, because to me that's a lot of times I try to explain the difference between good and evil. I'm like, good are things that are anything that's not a wrong, basically. You know, you're not causing harm. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of things, if the whole mass of our population and our culture is involved in wrongdoing, which kind of is the case, not kind of, it is, it's digging a hole. So if you're not doing anything, you're just like a default helper of evil, you know?
Well, think about this. I'll bring up a very controversial subject. What about porn? What if you're watching porn, right? Instead of making a great video like this, you spend 1 hour, whatever, doing your thing. Now, think about everything, because everybody wants to get the pedophiles. Let's get the pedophiles in the sewers and all this stuff. Hey guys, let me tell you something. If you're watching porn, like, it's supported by pedophilia, like, you could stop with your own appetites, because if you don't spend that time doing that, and less people did, they don't have your attention, and then that shit just falls away. You don't have to go get anybody or tell them to do anything. It just stops working. It's kind of like this capitalist thing they keep talking about that I've never seen happen. But you know, that's one of these principles that I think, if we see where our time and attention is, you know, it's like, if something is really grabbing people's attention and getting their attention, what's it really doing at the end of the day for you? Is it creating anything, or is it just a distraction? So yeah, man, it's
So it's
huge.
like if 99% of people are all digging, they're all digging the hole, you know, the 1% or the 2% left over start being like, look at this big giant pile of sand they made from digging this hole, and they start using that to build a castle. You know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Something productive, something good with your time. And if you're doing that, You're actually
idle
taking
hands.
that dirt that all those people are wasting and you're turning it into something of value, you know,
Yeah.
and building something for the future. So,
And that goes growing off of what I said. If you're one of these people who doesn't live in fear and despair, I'll tell you, my friend Ashley, just bring it back to her again. She started a business where she's promoting online. She's basically a social media promotion company. So people will come to her if they have a business, say they're like a tarot card reader or a medium or whatever. Or one person, I think they have a gym. You know, they started a gym where you can go work out, but they don't have the time to focus on their social media. So she brought upon herself. Now she didn't look for leads or anything. She went out and talked to everybody she knew on Instagram, had all these people up. She went to college with all this stuff. Said, listen, I started my thing, and she's very organized. And within like a week, she had 3 clients. And if she gets a few more, she has to hire me to help her, you know, and she'll be making more than she was making at her other job. So it's like she didn't have the fear. She overcame it, got out there, and she's not like some expert who like watched all these Mark Passio and like all these other videos. She was just, because of her upbringing and stuff, she had the right motivation, and you know, with a little bit of spiritual guidance from maybe me or other people, just by seeing my example, really, she kind of gets it now, and she's not afraid. And she's the only person I know. She moved out of LA in 2020, and she's moving back right now. I'm like, you are crazy, but I love it. Yeah, she's moving back to LA because she
wow.
doesn't care. She's like, I'm doing it. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you not to, because she's, you know, but anyway, so
You'll have to send me her link. That's really cool. I want to connect with Ashley too.
yeah,
That
you
sounds
would love,
awesome.
you could probably even you could probably record a podcast with her. She's so
Yeah.
organized. It's great because I'm more of the chaos and she's more of the order part of it. So like when, for example, if we, in our tarot podcast, every week we'll break down a card. So she has everything written out that she's going to talk about and all this stuff. I have no idea. I wait till we're going. I start a quote, you know, and she's like, what do you think about this card? She describes it, and then I just tell her, and I just flow. And I tried doing notes and stuff, but it just didn't work. And then she has it to bring it back around, and we have that flow, and it's a great partnership
Yeah,
that we,
the sun and the moon.
yeah, dude, it's it's great. It's magical. Now that we restarted it and we are having guests on now, we should have you on, actually. We'll definitely have you on.
Right on.
We can give you reading and stuff. We'll give you like a double reading. Now
That's
that we
cool
can
because
do,
I've been trying to learn my tarot cards. I actually like
oh,
what I do is I just turn one a day and then I
yeah.
kind of study on it a little bit and I notice what happens in my day and see if I can derive anything from it. I think that's a good way to learn little by little.
Well, if you have time in your rotation, check out my podcast. It's tarotbull.com, TAROTBULL. It's the funniest pun you ever heard. And I actually said that on stage once. And the lady said to me, no, it was so funny. I was at a comedy club and a guy got me a spot. I was doing, and I like on the way there, I was like, I got this brilliant joke I thought of. I'm like such a retard that I thought of this, but I was like, so I got on stage and I'm like, I got my cards read today like, I got my cards read today by a Taurus. It was terrible. And this lady was like,
No,
no, it was so funny. It's on video somewhere. I'll dig it
no
up. But
dad puns. Well, I like the way you play with words. I actually picked out. As I was starting to read your book, I found this one little passage I cut out. I want to read it out loud because I thought it was
yeah,
great. I
please
love
do.
words. I'm constantly doing puns, and I like wordplay, and I also like awesome alliteration. And here's what you wrote: knowing how the puzzle pieces of the past were placed, while peeping the present pieces pretty precisely, a person perhaps presupposes the path of prospective puzzle pieces. I almost got it perfect. Usually
That's
I'm
all
pretty
right.
good at that. But that
It
was
took me
pretty
forever
good.
to write it, so don't worry.
Pretty good P practice right there. I like that. But
Thanks.
yeah,
Yeah.
check out for anyone listening, check out Brandon Smith's book. I'll have to get the link to your website, the 2 links you shared, Tarot
Yeah.
Bowl and shadowwork.com, right?
Yeah, shadowwork.com. And my other website, where you can get everything, is morelawsmoreproblems.com. And that's where I
Problems.
started. Yeah, I've had that since like at late 2012, 2013. I've had that website. So
Yeah, I've checked in from time to time, so I've seen a little bit of your guys' tarot work. Love
yeah.
it. And I got one more thing I want to read too,
Yeah, please.
because I think this is right. This is something I'm putting in the presentation I was working on this week, and it's right in line with what we were talking about. Very positive. It's the very last, one of the very last paragraphs in The End of All Evil, the book I'm always quoting from. It says, "You are the key. To teach the people of Earth the value that they have within themselves, you need only to speak and tell them that every good thing is theirs to have. You need only tell them that the glory of liberty is real. and that it belongs to them. So I thought
Right.
that was right in line with what you were talking about in this episode too. So
Oh, I got chills right now. It's great. Yeah. So
all we got to do is tell them. You know, no one ever told me about this stuff.
Exactly.
You know, the importance of freedom, that's really what's going on. It's a war of freedom and slavery. Like, no one ever told me that until I heard it from Mark Passio. No one ever told me that, you know, a lot of this stuff, that truth is objective. You know, how come no one told me that? You know, all we got to do is share this stuff with people. And maybe you're right. Maybe things are turned around sooner than we think. But you know, I wouldn't say. On the other hand, don't be too hopeful. Don't have rose-colored glasses. If people are too hopeful, then they don't want to put in the work. You know, if you look at the real situation we're in, like you described in the book, like waking up like Neo and realizing that the whole world is controlled and owned, you realize there's a lot of freaking work to do, and what you do with your time really does matter. If we're going to turn things around, we have to put in the effort and the energy. We're the key. So that's my last few words. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to say I feel like I'm hearing myself talk, so it's so great because it's so true. And not to be like hockey, but it's nice to hear other people say that. And I did want to say that the last thing I want to say is right now is a time for unification. All this division, it's done. That's not our thing. Like I've been in places, I went through I even met Mark Passio. I love the dude, right? And I've been to listening to other people and got their knowledge. And I've been around people like who were talking shit about him. And I didn't feel a need to stand up and defend him or anything. I just let it go. And I realized that they just didn't have an understanding of him. And I didn't have to defend him because his work doesn't need defense, you know? And it's like you could let people think what they want about certain people, but it's all about these ideas. That's really what's most important. And I think if Mark Passio was here, he'd probably freaking agree with me 100% because he doesn't give a shit what people think about him. I don't care what people think about me. It's about the message. So all this internet online squabbling crap that people come up with, you know, especially I see a lot with like flat earth and this stuff. It's like, dude, who cares? Like, listen, if we could just figure out how to live together, maybe a thing will unlock and we'll be like, oh my God, look, because I feel the answers are out there. And if you really do pay attention, you know, you'll see some things, especially like if you start following Crow 777 and you see these pictures and shit that people are coming up with these cameras, they're zooming into the moon. It's like, how can you zoom into a moon if it's supposed to be a million miles or whatever? You know, it's like, anyway. But again, I'll just say that this realm is not what we were told. So don't get bogged up in those little arguments. Just have a good, you know, go out and have a good time, enjoy it. And if you're the last thing I'll say is if you're on this road of working on yourself, stop right now and congratulate yourself. Do something, buy a bottle of wine, however you congratulate yourself, whatever it is, buy a chocolate bar, just congratulate yourself and say, I am one of the few percentage of people right now is actually doing this work and working on myself because no one else is. And I'm realizing right now I'm like my hardest slave driver, and that's what I'm working on now, being easy on myself. But I just also want to say, Chris, thank you so much. This is awesome.
Little pat on my back.
Yeah.
Good job, exactly, buddy. Man. Good job. You're doing all right. But don't give up. Try harder.
People in the future right now are praising our names. You don't understand. People in the future right now are having parties. They're naming streets after us. They're having celebrations, dude. That's what's going on right now. And we're having the party here. We could celebrate with them at the same time because we're in the future history books. They're going, dude, Chris is fucking, look at the shit he was saying in 2020. Look at what he said. He was killing it. Look at this guy. I'm telling you, that's what's going on right now.
You know, I have this little thing. It's so funny. If I'm in like you were saying, so often I'd been in stores and I was the only one who was not wearing a mask. And when I moved up to the area I'm at now, like you see a lot more. And my girlfriend and I have this joke. We were hiking one day and we were laughing. We started laughing so hard. We were making Christmas songs, and every Christmas song always has, and she wasn't wearing a mask at the end. And so like, whenever I'm out in public somewhere and I see someone else who's not wearing a mask, I'm like, I get this big smile, and in my head, it's the Christmas song, and they're not wearing a mask. And so like, great. It's just this little way to be joyful in the middle of the day. I don't have to know this person, but just that one little link we have, it's like, yes, I'm not the only one, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
so find joy where you can, you know?
Yeah.
It's not going to be an easy battle. There's a lot of people are just not going to get it, but
but
we can take a lot of joy and pride and happiness in the ones that do, and we can start building our new world because that's how it's done, one one step at a time, right?
Exactly. Well said.
Cool, brother. Well, I think I'm gonna get. I've been watching the Seed conference, so I'm gonna get back to that.
All
That's
right.
going on this weekend, and I wish you a good rest of your Friday, and we'll
Yeah, man. This is
connect
great.
again soon. Yeah, I'd love to be on your
Yeah,
show, and
definitely stay in touch. All right, man.
I'll be reading the
Yeah,
book.
definitely.
Thanks for making that, man. Good work.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's
I'll
a
talk
big
to you soon.
inspiration to me too, because I need to write a book. So
Yeah,
if
well,
Brandon
yeah,
can do it, I can do it.
that's what I'm saying. If I could do it, and I'll tell you this, like somebody said to me, they're like, now that you wrote a book, you have it out there, you basically up leveled. Like you don't understand it yet, but and it started to come to me kind of, but it's like you're on another level. There's a piece of you that will always survive now. Well, maybe not always, but you know what I mean? It's like this piece of you that you put out there, your perspective. So now you're like a master or whatever, or so it's, yeah, it's crazy. And now also, so that's the serious part. But the funny part is I get to tell people I'm an author. Like I keep saying all the time, like,
Yeah, buddy.
go read my book. They're like, you're not wearing a mask. I'm like, go read my book. It's all in there.
You want to know why? Read the book.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, brother.
All right. Take care.
Have a good one. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
All right. Bye.